One faulty sensor, one loose bolt, one corroded bracket. That's all it took to turn a day of fun into the most disturbing amusement park incidents ever documented. These aren't just freak accidents at places meant for joy and laughter. They're chilling reminders that when safety systems fail, the consequences can be catastrophic. It was August 9th, 2015, when 28-year-old Lila Chapman arrived at a seaside amusement park in Santa Cruz, California, with 3 co-workers for what should have been a perfect summer afternoon. Lila worked in food service and was known for her adventurous spirit, always the first to suggest trying new restaurants or activities. Her companions included Jenna, a 30-year-old server with an outgoing personality who could make friends anywhere, Omar, a 27-year-old warehouse worker whose meticulous nature made him notice details others missed, and Chris, a 31-year-old substitute educator whose cautious demeanor often balanced the group's more impulsive decisions. The group had received an unexpected afternoon off due to a last-minute schedule change and decided to hit the park's largest inverted roller coaster first. The weather was perfect with clear skies and a light coastal breeze, and the ride was running continuous cycles with no delays. As they approached the loading platform, Omar's keen eye caught a faint squeaking sound coming from their train during test dispatches, but operations continued normally. A small placard near the station read "Test cycle completed, cleared for operation," indicating recent maintenance work. What the riders didn't know was that morning maintenance had adjusted the over-the-shoulder restraint sensors, and this particular coaster model operated without secondary seatbelts. Lila was assigned to the front left seat. When the operator performed the routine push check, her harness latched at a lower detent than typical, creating a visibly larger chest clearance. A second operator confirmed restraint lights as part of the standard dual check procedure. However, the miscalibrated sensor registered this gap as acceptable, and the panel indicators showed all restraints verified, allowing dispatch. The train rolled out smoothly, with the familiar sound of anti-rollback dogs clicking on the lift hill. After cresting the 180-foot drop, the coaster pulled high G-forces through a zero-G roll. During these early maneuvers, Lila's over-the-shoulder restraint exhibited slight upward movement within the latch mechanism due to vibration and the initial excessive gap. As the train entered the first vertical loop, peak upward acceleration occurred with riders inverted at the apex. The restraint's ratchet pawl, which had been marginally engaged due to the starting gap, allowed a momentary climb by 1 increment under the dynamic load. This small movement was enough to compromise the restraint's effectiveness. Lila's hips cleared the seat pan, and despite her forearms striking the seat wing, she separated completely from the restraint system. Her trajectory intersected with a support crossmember adjacent to the loop structure, before she impacted the ground within the restricted area below. The remaining riders immediately began shouting as they witnessed the horrific event unfold. The train continued its programmed course until reaching the next block break, where the operator executed an emergency stop. Emergency medical services arrived quickly and initiated advanced life support protocols, but Lila had sustained catastrophic blunt force trauma, including cervical spine dislocation, multiple rib fractures with lung injuries, severe traumatic brain injury, and rapid internal hemorrhaging. Despite all efforts, she was pronounced dead at the scene. The investigation revealed that the combination of the restraint position sensor and the absence of a secondary belt system on this coaster model had created the conditions for this tragedy. The root cause was traced to a tolerance stack-up in the restraint's position sensor calibration, which allowed the system to register a partially latched harness as fully secured. The affected train was immediately removed from service, and all restraint assemblies, sensor calibration records, and dispatch logs were secured as evidence. The park suspended operations on the ride pending a complete safety review and recalibration of all restraint systems. It was May 21, 2016, when 22-year-old Trevor Benson made his way to Midway Heights Amusement Park in Branson, Missouri, with his younger sister and 2 friends for an evening of thrill rides before closing time. Trevor worked in retail and was known for his easygoing nature and willingness to try any ride. His sister Kayla, a 19-year-old coffee shop worker with boundless energy, had convinced the group to squeeze in one more adventure as the sun began to set. Joining them were Marcus, a 23-year-old landscaper whose calm demeanor made him the voice of reason, and Dana, a 24-year-old retail associate whose organized personality meant she always kept track of everyone's belongings. The group targeted the park's towering drop ride, which stood over 200 feet tall. The queue was short as most families had already headed home, leaving mainly teenagers and young adults seeking that final adrenaline rush. What the riders couldn't have known was that maintenance had been performed earlier that day on the restraint switch bank. One of the seats in Trevor's row had been tagged as temporarily unavailable, but the tag was removed later that afternoon, after a shift supervisor authorized its return to service following a brief function test. In an effort to maximize capacity during the busy evening period, the operations team cleared the row for use despite no formal sign-off from the maintenance lead. This particular drop tower model was designed without secondary seat belts, relying solely on over-the-shoulder restraints and position sensors to ensure rider safety. When Trevor was seated in an outer position, the operator performed the standard push-check procedure, and his harness appeared to latch properly. However, the restraint had engaged at a higher clearance than normal, which should have been caught by the position sensor. The gondola began its steady ascent, carrying 20 riders toward the peak. Light wind gusts remained within operational limits, and the ride's computer system showed all green lights. At the top, the gondola briefly rotated to face the midway below before the countdown began. When the solenoids fired and freefall initiated, the sudden transition to negative G-forces created upward forces on all riders' bodies. For most passengers, properly fitted restraints easily contained these forces. However, Trevor's miscalibrated position sensor had allowed his restraint to engage with an excessive chest gap that the system incorrectly registered as safe. The peak negative acceleration during the initial drop caused Trevor's torso to rise above the shoulder wings of his restraint. Though the ratcheting mechanism remained technically latched, the starting position had been so far out of specification that his pelvis cleared the seat pan entirely. Trevor separated from the gondola early in the drop, following a ballistic trajectory that intersected with one of the tower's cross braces before he fell to the exclusion zone below. The remaining riders experienced the programmed deceleration sequence and came to a normal stop at the base. The ride operators remained at their positions as protocol demanded, immediately implementing lockout procedures while emergency services were summoned. When paramedics arrived, they quickly determined that Trevor had sustained unsurvivable multi-system trauma, including skull fractures, massive internal injuries, and catastrophic hemorrhaging. The investigation focused on the restraint position sensor calibration and the decision to return the previously tagged seat to service. Marcus later provided investigators with crucial details about observing another rider's restraint, requiring multiple attempts to latch properly. The tower was immediately secured and removed from operation, pending a complete forensic analysis. State inspectors and manufacturer engineers were notified, and the control system was sealed for evidence. It was July 2nd, 2017, when 34-year-old Ethan Ward arrived at a local amusement park in Allentown, Pennsylvania, with two colleagues for what was supposed to be a refreshing break from the sweltering summer heat. Ethan worked in an office environment and was known for his methodical approach to everything. His colleagues had convinced him to join them for a midday outing to beat the oppressive temperatures. Accompanying Ethan were Priya, a 29-year-old administrative worker whose attention to detail made her invaluable at work, and Luis, a 36-year-old delivery driver whose upbeat personality could lift anyone's spirits. The trio decided that the park's classic log flume would be perfect to cool off while enjoying some mild thrills. As they approached the attraction, they noticed a sign indicating reduced capacity due to maintenance on one water pump. The water level appeared marginally lower than usual, but operations continued. A boat ahead had briefly stalled before the conveyor lift, then resumed after a few moments. This log flume operated without lap bars, following traditional design where riders sat in line with feet in a front footwell separated by a central divider. Ethan took the front position, with Priya behind him and Luis in the rear. The operator reminded them to keep arms inside and maintain proper seating position. As their log engaged the conveyor lift, they heard a slight shudder during the first small drop. An audible scraping sound began from the right side. and the hull rode higher against the right channel fender than normal. Overhead speakers crackled intermittently, though a maintenance technician had given an all-clear gesture. At the second drop entry, the boat's trajectory became problematic. The bow climbed onto the side panel and caught on a protruding bolt head. The log yawed and became wedged diagonally across the waterway. Oncoming water pushed the bow downward while the stern remained elevated. Ethan's shins slid under the central divider, and his feet became trapped in the front footwell's geometry. The jam angle and water pressure made withdrawal impossible. Priya tried pulling him backward, while Luis helped from behind, but without proper leverage, their efforts proved futile. The boat remained locked diagonally across the channel. The pump system continued operating, forcing water into a confined pocket around the bow. Within minutes, the front compartment filled rapidly, and water rose toward Ethan's chin as he remained trapped forward. Attendants quickly signaled to shut down pumps, but mechanical access to free the jammed hull took precious time. Water flow couldn't be stopped immediately because the pump isolation valves were located in a locked service alcove. The hand attempt to lift the boat failed due to torque from the wedged position and accumulated water weight. As the surging water continued overtopping the bow section, Ethan's airway became repeatedly submerged. Despite frantic efforts from companions and the arriving maintenance crew, extraction remained blocked until they brought mechanical prying tools. By the time maintenance used a pry bar to free the boat's bow from the protruding bolt, Ethan had sustained fatal injuries from prolonged submersion and entrapment. Emergency medical services performed CPR and advanced airway management, but were unable to restore a sustainable pulse. The investigation revealed that the protruding bolt and excessive guide wheel wear had created conditions for the hull to jam. Reduced water flow from the offline pump also contributed to the boat's abnormal positioning. Priya's detailed account of the scraping sounds provided crucial information for investigators, while Luis confirmed the jam sequence. The affected channel section was immediately drained and closed, pending a complete safety review of all hardware and water flow systems. It was October 14, 2018, when 41-year-old Naomi Curtis arrived at Granite Gorge Fun Center in Ogden, Utah, with 3 neighbor friends for a late-season festival weekend adventure. Naomi worked in healthcare administration and was known for her calm, nurturing personality. She had been looking forward to this outing as a way to unwind from work stresses. Her companions included Alicia, a 39-year-old nursing assistant whose practical nature made her invaluable in any crisis; Brent, a 42-year-old automotive mechanic whose methodical approach carried over into every aspect of his life; and Hazel, a 38-year-old art teacher whose observant eye often caught details others missed. The group decided to experience the park's flagship pendulum ride before heading home. The massive attraction stood as the centerpiece of the midway, its towering arm capable of swinging riders nearly vertical, while the gondola spun independently. Earlier that morning, the ride had undergone routine maintenance, including walk-down inspection and fastener torque checks. No out-of-service postings were visible, and operations appeared to be running smoothly with full capacity loading. As they waited in queue, Brent's mechanical background kicked in when he heard a faint metallic rattle from near the gondola interface. When he mentioned it to the ride operator, a quick visual inspection was conducted, and operations resumed without delay. Naomi was seated in seat 5 at the outer edge, with Alicia adjacent and Brent and Hazel positioned opposite. The operator performed standard firm press checks on each rider's over-the-shoulder harnesses before initiating the cycle. The ride began with slow, building arcs as the massive arm gained momentum. Rotational speed increased as the pendulum reached near vertical swings. The combination of forces created intense sensations as riders experienced alternating weightlessness and heavy G-forces. What none could see was a critical defect in seat 5's mounting bracket. The right side support had been compromised by metal fatigue and hidden corrosion beneath the painted surface, invisible to routine visual inspections. At peak swing amplitude, the gondola experienced maximum combined rotational and torsional loads. The compromised bracket, weakened by microscopic cracks and wall thickness loss, reached its failure point under extreme forces. The right support bracket suddenly sheared completely, followed by deformation and tearing of the remaining attachment point. With structural integrity compromised, the seat pitched laterally and restraint geometry changed abruptly. The lap shoulder system, designed for a properly positioned seat, no longer aligned correctly. As the seat dropped toward the open side, Naomi slipped past the compromised restraint envelope and separated from the gondola entirely. Her trajectory carried her on a ballistic path that intersected with a support stanchion during the pendulum's downswing before ground impact. Operators immediately triggered emergency stop, and the massive arm coasted through decreasing arcs before stopping. Emergency medical services initiated advanced life support protocols, but Naomi had sustained catastrophic injuries, including severe blunt force trauma, pelvic fractures, massive internal hemorrhaging, multiple fractures, and fatal traumatic brain injury. Investigation focused on the bracket failure, with metallurgical analysis revealing fatigue striations and extensive corrosion undetectable through standard visual methods. The fractured hardware was collected as evidence. Brent's pre-ride observation of the metallic rattle became crucial evidence, while Hazel provided detailed seating charts and event sequences. The ride was immediately locked out, with all similar attractions suspended pending comprehensive structural inspections using advanced detection methods. Following the failure, ultrasonic and magnetic particle tests became mandatory for similar rides. It was June 18, 2015, when 17-year-old Grayson Miller finished his shift at a local retail store and met up with 3 friends at a nearby amusement park in northern Ohio for an evening of rides. Grayson was known for his infectious enthusiasm and willingness to try anything once. The recent rain had just cleared, leaving the boardwalk glistening under the early evening lights. His companions included his cousin Tyler, a 19-year-old warehouse worker whose quiet demeanor balanced Grayson's outgoing personality, May, an 18-year-old lifeguard whose attentive nature came from watching over swimmers, and Jordan, a 17-year-old cashier whose upbeat attitude matched Grayson's energy. The group decided to start with the classic chair swing ride as a low-intensity warm-up. The vintage ride featured suspended chairs hanging from chains, with riders lifted outward by centrifugal force as the central hub rotated. They noticed one chair in the inner ring had been roped off, but the outer ring operated at full capacity. A maintenance notice indicated chain inspection had been completed the previous day. The operator announced a slightly longer cycle, and music volume was turned up high enough to mask mechanical sounds. Grayson and Jordan shared a dual seat swing in the outer ring. The seating included a lap chain and a simple secondary seatbelt. The attendant performed a standard tug check before moving to the next chair. What none could detect was a microscopic crack in a chain link near the seat's clevis connection. This fatigue failure develops gradually over thousands of loading cycles, remaining invisible until catastrophic failure. As rotation began, chairs lifted outward in the familiar pattern. Speed increased toward maximum, and wind from the nearby lake pushed outer chairs to dramatic angles. The cyclical loading placed repetitive stress on every suspension component. The hidden crack propagated rapidly under cyclical stress until reaching critical size. The right side support chain failed suddenly, causing the dual seat to twist violently as the left side chain momentarily took full load of both riders. The asymmetric loading proved too much for the remaining connection. The left side S-hook, a legacy connector from the ride's original construction, deformed under extreme force and tore free from its attachment point. Both Grayson and Jordan separated simultaneously, but their trajectories diverged based on instantaneous swing position. Jordan's path carried him clear of the perimeter fence, resulting in serious but survivable injuries on grass beyond the ride area. Grayson's trajectory intersected with a decorative light pole lining the midway. The impact occurred chest first at significant velocity, followed by contact with concrete pavement below. The operator immediately engaged the emergency stop, but the rotating structure required time to decelerate safely. May quickly assisted Jordan, applying first aid while directing emergency responders to both victims. Tyler called emergency services and guided paramedics through the gathering crowd. Emergency medical services arrived within minutes and began triage. Jordan was stabilized and transported with multiple fractures but intact vital signs. Grayson had sustained fatal chest trauma, including multiple rib fractures, cardiac and pulmonary injuries, catastrophic internal bleeding, and secondary traumatic brain injury. Advanced life support protocols were initiated, but injury severity prevented circulation restoration. Grayson was pronounced dead at the scene despite the emergency team's efforts. The investigation focused on failed chain components and S-hook connector age. Metallurgical examination revealed classic fatigue failure signs, while the deformed S-hook showed gradual weakening over time. The ride was secured, and similar attractions were suspended pending comprehensive inspection. The ride dated back to the late 1980s and was still operating under older inspection standards. It was March 4, 2018, when 52-year-old Tara Whitmore arrived at Old Mill Heritage Park in Richmond, Virginia. Tara worked in medical office management and was known for her patient, methodical approach to handling stressful situations. The light drizzle outside had prompted the group to seek indoor entertainment. Her companions included her brother Dean, a 55-year-old transportation dispatcher whose punctual nature came from coordinating delivery schedules, her niece Sophia, a 21-year-old college student whose analytical mind was always questioning how things worked, and her friend Carla, a 53-year-old office clerk. The nostalgic dark ride featured elaborate colonial history scenes. As they approached the loading platform, they noticed a faint electrical odor, though staff seemed unconcerned, and operations continued normally. A sign mentioned that updated lighting had been installed during the week. The ride had experienced a brief delay earlier, but had resumed normal operation. Tara and Carla were assigned to the front car, while Dean and Sophia took the trailing car, the lap bars locked into position. Dean noticed a brief flicker in a decorative panel fixture during loading. When mentioned to the operator, a circuit breaker was reset and operations continued. The cars began their journey into the first scene with colonial tableau illuminated by spotlights. However, a distinct sparking noise became audible from the decorative side panels. The recent electrical work had created a hazard within a concealed wiring chase behind scenic elements. The installation had been completed quickly for opening weekend, but proper ventilation considerations were overlooked. Gray smoke began accumulating from the hidden compartment, and normal ventilation fans appeared offline. The confined corridor meant smoke would concentrate quickly. The train stopped unexpectedly at a block section with lap bars remaining locked, positioning Tara's car directly within the developing smoke pocket where combustion products filled the narrow corridor. A localized fire ignited within the concealed wiring chase, remaining contained but producing dangerous smoke and toxic gases. The combustion products quickly created a hazardous atmosphere. Dean used the emergency intercom to alert operators, who initiated the emergency stop and attempted to reverse the train. However, car spacing and safety interlocks prevented immediate extraction. Maintenance responded with fire extinguishers and opened emergency access doors for ventilation. However, manual lap bar override required specialized tools and access from the narrow maintenance walkway. Tara, in the front left seat of the lead car, remained exposed to the highest smoke concentration due to airflow patterns. The extraction process was complicated by confined space conditions. By the time maintenance manually released the lap bars and moved cars to a clearer section, Tara had been exposed to dangerous combustion gas levels for an extended period. Emergency medical services provided high-flow oxygen and advanced airway management once Tara was removed. However, she went into cardiac arrest during transport and, despite sustained resuscitative efforts, could not be revived. Investigation revealed the recently installed lighting had overloaded circuits within the scenic panel, causing overheating and ignition. The ventilation system had been disabled during electrical work and not properly restored. Dean's observation of the panel flicker became crucial evidence. The park suspended all indoor attractions pending comprehensive inspections, revealing multiple code violations related to recent work and inadequate smoke management systems. The fire marshal later cited NFPA code violations for wiring and emergency egress deficiencies. Thanks for watching. Want to watch more? Click on your screen now.